Right, so today we're going to continue on the next topic under chapter number 1, right? Remember, you have learned data collection, level of measurement. We already know what is a definition of variable and what is the definition of data, and we can differentiate between these two. Under variable, we have two type of uh, data variables, which is qualitative variables and quantitative variables. And the quantitative variable we already know there are two type of quantitative variable, which is discrete and continuous. And we also know there are four level of measurement under this type of variables, right? So make sure you understand and know what is the difference between nominal and ordinal, and know what is the difference between interval and ratio, right? So this is very important. If you fail to understand this type of level of measurement, then you cannot answer the first question in test and final assessment, right? And you might not be able to do your project very well, right? So make sure you do the exercise number 1, as I said last lecture. So now for today, let's look at into a data collection method. So in data collection method, there are several data collection method available, such as the direct questionnaire, direct observation, right? And then mail or postal questionnaire, face-to-face interview, telephone interview. This is a direct observation, or what we call as observation, and others methods such as email, video recording, and so on lah. So this is all different type of data collection method lah. So this data collection method is can be used based on situation, right? Based on situation. If you are using questionnaire, right? If you are developing a questionnaire, you want to collect a data based on questionnaire, right? There are several methods are available, such as a direct questionnaire means that you distribute the questionnaire to the respondents, and expecting the respondent to fill in the questionnaire and return back to you, right? Face-to-face interviews means that you do a face-to-face interview. You have a question and you ask the respondent about your research, right? So you are expecting respondent to answer each question that you throw to the respondent, right? Another type of data collection method. This is when you are doing questionnaire, huh? Direct questionnaire, face-to-face interview. You still have a question. A postal or mail questionnaire, you still have a questionnaire. You basically, this is an old method, huh? Where we post or we mail the questionnaire to the respondent, and we are expecting the respondent to fill in and return back the questionnaire. This is very low response, right? This is usually you're going to have a low response lah when you are doing mail or postal questionnaire lah. Telephone interviews, this is most common nowadays. There are many people are doing telephone interviews or online interviews, right? So pernah dengar bila you call, let's say ada offer daripada Celcom ke, dia akan call kan, so dia akan tanya, right, so when you hantar you punya kereta ke service center, and after that then the service sales marketer tu akan call daripada KL kan, daripada ni. So dia akan call, dia akan tanya macam mana servis, bagus ke tak bagus, right? That is a type of phone questionnaire lah. Right, another type of data collection method is email or video recording lah. So nowadays, this is a very popular method. So email not stop at email. Nowadays we have a social media, right? So social media can be a platform to do data collection, right? Such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so on lah, right? So direct observation means that when you are doing observation, for example, let's say my study last last study I buat knowledge, attitude and practice on dengue fever prevention. So knowledge and attitude, I give a questionnaire to the respondent to fill in. For the practice, I did a observation around dia punya rumah tu lah, tengok dia punya practice dia macam mana, dia tutup air dalam tutup air ke tak tutup air, longkang dia banyak sampah ke tak banyak sampah, right? Kita tengok macam tu. So this is a type of observation lah. So observation normally in experimental punya design lah, right? Whether clinical or non-clinical experiment, right? So this is all data collection method available, right? So let's look at into a sampling techniques. So before we go to sampling techniques, right, you already know what is a definition of sample, right? Sample means that we take a portion from a population, right? Because we cannot survey all member in the population, so that's why we did a sample. We take a sample. So we take a sample to make inference to the population. We want to conclude the whole population based on our sample. Sample can be many, right? In a sample, we have a sampling unit, right? Let's say capital N equal to 5,000 is our population member. Let's say the first sample, this is S1, sample number 1, N is equal to 400. So in a sample can have many observation, and this observation called as sampling unit, right? This is what we call as sampling unit, and this is sample number 1. We can have another sample, which is sample number 2, N equal to 400 as well, and this 400 is called as sampling unit as well, right? So why we need a sample? Why we do a sample? Because when we have a very large population, right, we cannot handle the all member in the population. That's why we take a sample to save time, to save cost and resource. Resource means labor, right? And we can also we are doing sample because we want to reduce a sampling errors, right? We cannot simply take mana-mana sample daripada population ni. There are procedure to select a sample, right? Kita bukan simply ambil, oh, this one kita ambil sini, ambil suka hati ambil. So when you suka hati ambil, how are you going to determine that your sample is representing the whole population, right? So that's why there are sampling process and sampling techniques, right? So bukan kita maksudnya, let's say you buat a questionnaire, let's say you want to know the experience of or satisfaction of boarding a bus, kan, contoh. So you masuk dalam, you tunggu dekat terminal, you ambil siapa-siapa yang turun daripada bus terminal tu, you distribute questionnaire. That is not a very good sampling techniques lah, right? So you might increase the sampling error. The sample might not really represent the whole population, right? So that's why we need to do a sampling techniques. So another reason why we need to do a sampling technique, because it gives accuracy to the sample result, right? And when result of the study are required in a short of time lah, so that's why we need to do a sampling techniques. Now let's look at the sampling process. So sampling process start with the definition of population. So we need to understand who is our population. When we understand who is our population, then we need to establish the sampling frame. The sampling frame are optional, right? Optional. When you are doing randomized sampling techniques, so most of randomized sampling technique require a sampling frame, because they want to do you want to assign random number to select a sampling unit. So what is the definition of sampling frame? Again, last class we already looked into the definition of sampling frame. Sampling frame, again, I repeat, is a list of all members in the population, consists of their details such as name, phone number, address, and so on lah. because we want to select a sampling unit, then we want to contact that sampling unit. Kita bukan buat sampling frame, sampling process is not an instantaneous process. Maksudnya kita bukan pergi ke that sampling population, kita terus ambil sample unit. It's not an instantaneous process. Consists of a long plan process lah. So you kena ada plan untuk select which sampling unit that you want to include into your sample, right? So next process is once you already establish a sampling frame, then you need to determine how many sampling unit that you want to select. How many sample you want to select, how many sampling unit you want to select for each sample. So this is consists of a lot of mathematical calculation lah. So dalam ni kita akan belajar dalam chapter number 3, estimation. Right. So next chapter is a descriptive statistics, and on estimation chapter kita akan belajar how to determine the sample size for each objective. Let's say you want to do a linear regression, so you need to determine the sample size based on the methods. If you want to do one-way ANOVA, so you need to determine the sample size that satisfy one-way ANOVA. Right, this is a method that we are looking into in estimation. So there are another school of thought dalam social science, right? So we don't need to depend on which method that we want to use to determine the sample size. Dia ada method menggunakan rule yang based on experience. How many? Say 300 samples, 300 sampling unit observation, or 1,000 based on the number of questionnaire. So that method is very too fuzzy. We cannot determine the exact power of the statistical test, and we cannot determine the effect size from that sampling techniques determined. Right. So next, once you already determine how many sample size that you want to include, the step number 4 is you need to specify the sampling method, whether you want to use a probabilistic sampling method or non-probabilistic sampling method. Right. So of course, if you have a sampling frame, so you would prefer more on probabilistic sampling method lah, because it will reduce sampling error and will increase the accuracy of the sample result. Right? And it's actually a representative method lah. So sample yang kita select daripada randomized or probabilistic sampling techniques is actually a presentable sample to the population, right? So nanti kita akan tengok what is the difference between probabilistic and non-probabilistic sampling techniques. And then once we already determine which method that we want to use, and which method that we want to use is depend on your situation, on your budget, on your time, on your cost, right? So then we're going to select the sample lah. This is a 5-step in sampling process. So you need to remember the step. This is very important. Very important. Right. So now let's look at a type of sampling techniques. Right. So today going to be very short lecture. So kita nak habiskan yang ni saja. Dah habis dah. Chapter number 1. Dah habis sampai. Yes. Kita tengok one by one. We need to understand the difference between probabilistic and non-probabilistic sampling techniques. So we look into probabilistic sampling technique first. Right, because I really like probabilistic sampling technique because most of parametric tests require probabilistic sampling techniques. Right, if you want to do one-way ANOVA, require a representative sample. Means that you need to use a probabilistic sampling techniques. If you are using chi-square analysis, right, is also require a probabilistic sampling techniques, but sometimes people are doing with non-probabilistic sampling techniques. So now let's look at probabilistic sampling techniques. We have under probabilistic sampling technique we have 5 methods that usually discussed on most statistical books, but actually there are a lot more beyond than this, right? Ada banyak lagi, but this is the fundamental sampling techniques on probabilistic sampling techniques. Right, the first sampling technique is a simple random sampling. This is the most fundamental, which is the most basic. We will use simple random sampling techniques on systematic sampling techniques, cluster, stratified, and multi-stage. Right. So the important part is simple random sampling. That's what we call as simple. This is the most basic. Right. So systematic sampling techniques, cluster sampling techniques, stratified, and multi-stage. Right. Dia ada satu lagi, ada cluster, yes. Alright. So let's look at the the description of probability sampling techniques. In probabilistic sampling techniques or randomized sampling techniques, benda yang sama if you refer to others book, sometimes we call as a random sampling technique, right? Or randomized sampling technique lah, right? So benda yang sama is using a random number, right? So a complete sampling frame must be available or can be prepared from a target population to ensure samples are being selected randomly, because we want to apply the randomness in the sampling process. So that's why we need to have a sampling frame, a complete list of sampling frame, except systematic sampling techniques. In systematic sampling techniques, sometimes it does not require a full list of sampling frame. So is it hard to get a sampling frame? Yes, is it hard? It is very hard to get a sampling frame when you have a very large population. For example, let's say you want to study knowledge, attitude and practice on dengue fever prevention at Perak Tengah District resident. Perak Tengah District means one of the district in Perak lah. Right? So the population or residents in the Perak Tengah might be 100,000 or 200,000, right? So it is very impossible, very hard to get the full list of member in that area. So that's why the the to get a full list of sampling frame is nearly impossible lah. Sometimes people yang kita, let's say kita dapat tu, maybe dia sudah mati, maybe dia sudah migrate to others place, right? So it's kind very hard to get a full list of sampling frame lah. That's why when you have a very large population, you will not use simple random sampling. We will not use a stratified sampling method or cluster sampling method. We will use either multi-stage sampling method, or we switch to the non-probability sampling techniques, where in non-probability sampling techniques, a complete list of member in the population, which is a sampling frame, is not needed. Right. So usually when you have a very small population, then baru kita buat sampling frame. Let's say in the context of UiTM students. So UiTM students, we only have 5,000 students and easy access, right? So we can get the complete list of students by dealing with the HEA or HEP, right? So daripada situ kita boleh dapat the complete list with their details, right? So kita boleh contact. Then senanglah kita nak guna probabilistic sampling techniques. Kalau kita susah nak dapat complete list, then we might consider to switch to non-probabilistic sampling techniques. Boleh faham apa saya cakap? Can you understand? So another properties in probabilistic sampling techniques is it ensures every unit in the population has an equal chance of being chosen. Means that in a sampling frame, let's say we have 100 members in the population, 1, 2, 3, 4 until 100, right? Every member in the sampling frame in the population have an equal chance, means that this having 1 over 100 probability, this is also 1 over 100 probability, 1 over 100, and until 100 lah, 1 over 100 juga. So equal chance of being selected as a sampling frame, the sampling unit, right? So the properties for non-probability sampling techniques, we will look into a convenient sampling techniques, judgmental sampling techniques, snowball and quarter. We will look on four lah. Basically, this is the fundamental non-probability sampling technique yang kita akan tengok lah. So basically, there are more out there. Ada banyak lagi non-probability sampling method. Tapi kita akan fokus on these four only. Sama juga probability sampling technique, we will only focus on these 5 methods. So tak payah pening-pening nak tengok benda lain. Right? Once you understand this method, then you can extend your knowledge on others method jugalah. Right? A sampling frame is not needed. A complete sampling frame is not needed because we are not going to use a sampling frame at all for a non-probability sampling techniques. Samples are selected either convenience or from a prior experience of the researcher. At convenience, maksudnya dia let's say they want to do a study on cigarette, contoh, brand of cigarette. Dia tanya which yang mana yang customer suka brand of cigarette, contoh. So dia duduk depan kedai runcit, siapa-siapa yang beli rokok, dia tanya soalan. At their convenience, right? Tak ada langsung element of randomness. So that's why non-probability sampling techniques is non-preferable because it not really represent the whole population. Ada satu lagi, dia menggunakan teknik convenient juga dalam bentuk quarter sampling, right? As long as the quarter is fit in, dan cukup, right? Dia tak kisah. Itu adalah non-probability sampling techniques. Kita akan tengok detail nanti, right? So kita mula dengan non-probability sampling techniques lah. Right, so once we finish on non-probability sampling technique, we take a 5-minute rest before we continue on simple random sampling. Right, convenient sampling techniques. As it name as convenience, kan benda yang senang. Convenience is a non-probability sampling techniques. It is recommended for pre-testing of the questionnaire. This method are usually recommended when you are doing a pre-testing questionnaire. Means you are developing a questionnaire, so you want to test whether your questionnaire is ready to go for the actual field or not ready. You want to test whether the questionnaire is reliable or valid. So you do a convenient sampling techniques to take a sample to test the questionnaire, not to get the result, but to test the questionnaire whether the questionnaire is reliable or not reliable. So getting ideas and insight or forming the hypothesis. This is the one of usage of the convenient sampling techniques lah. Selected sample are left primary to the interviewer where suitability is the primary consideration. Macam tadi saya cakap lah, at their convenience. Dia duduk depan kedai, dia tanya soalan. Ataupun dia nak tengok satisfaction of customer who boarding the bus. So dia masuk join dalam bus tu, dia distribute questionnaire sebelum bus jalan. Right? At their convenience. Right? So example dekat sini, a Pepsi challenge contest was administered at a shopping mall with aim to determine whether people prefer one product or to another. So those inclined to take the test might form a sample of the study on how many people prefer Pepsi over Coke lah. This is one example. Benda yang sama juga. So disadvantage introduce bias to the researcher. right? Disadvantage, it does not require sampling frame, easy to implement, and it's inexpensive lah. So senang nak buat, jimat masa, senang nak dapat respondent. Right, this is the advantage. Disadvantage is introduce bias, means that the sampling unit that you select to might not represent the whole population. Right. So judgmental sampling techniques is a sampling techniques based on the judgment of the researcher. Right. Maksudnya dia tengok, let's say dia duduk depan kedai, dia tengok tak ada siapa yang beli rokok pun, nak tanya soalan berkenaan dengan brand of cigarette. So dia tengok orang yang lalu, okay dia ni ini macam serokok ni, dia bagi soalan. Dia bagi questionnaire. So based on judgment of the researcher, based on experience, right? Based on a prior experience. So researchers select respondent whom he feel possess certain characteristic that represent the population of interest based on their experience, right? So this technique used when a limited number of category people have information that sort. Right, so advantage is less time consuming. Sangat jimat masa lah. Right, based on their experience, less expensive, a sample guaranteed to meet a specific objective. So again, disadvantage is introduced bias and will not represent the whole population lah. Right, it will make a incorrect or inaccurate conclusion towards the population. Right, so quarter sampling techniques, right? Quarter sampling techniques is a procedure similar to convenience, right? We still apply the convenience method, right? So kalau kita tengok dalam probabilistic sampling techniques, the fundamental techniques is a simple random sampling. But for non-probabilistic sampling technique, the fundamental is a convenience sampling, right? Convenience means suka hati you duduk depan, you distribute, right? So the procedure is similar to convenient, except the number of sample is selected up to the researcher choice. Contoh, let's say you want to select based on gender. For male, you're setting to get the respondent only 50 respondent. For female, you want to select only 50 respondent. So once the male respondent is cukup, up to the quota, so you won't find any male respondent. You cari female respondent saja. You just nak cukupkan quota. So how the procedure of selecting is based on the convenient sampling techniques lah. Right? So tengok dekat sini dia kata the researcher select the predetermined number of individual from a different class of population, usually at different age, gender or occupational. So advantage and disadvantage. Advantage is does not require sampling frame as usual. Save time, cost and time, effort and time lah. So cukup quota sudah. Right? That is quota sampling techniques lah. Right? So again, it's not represent the whole population lah. It will introduce a bias, and the conclusion may not be accurate towards the population. And the last non-probabilistic sampling technique is a snowball sampling techniques. Right? An initial, okay, this is different. Dia konsep snowball, maksudnya based on recommendation of the respondent, right? So the initial group of the respondent is selected, usually at random or convenience, because this is under convenience sampling techniques. So after being interviewed, these respondents are asked to identify others who belong to the target population based on the recommendation lah. Maksudnya I go and find one respondent, ask about the let's say dia pakai about one type of car lah, contoh let's say Honda contoh. So dia tanya lagi siapa yang dalam member yang kenal menggunakan brand yang sama. Right? So dia akan based on recommendation of the respondent. Right? So Advantage is can estimate rare characteristic, means that this is very suitable when you are doing a rare characteristic lah. Contoh macam let's say you are one of you cari satu karakteristik yang very rare, and then it's hard to get when you go to the public, right? It must be under certain group of ataupun population persatuan ke, right? So you nak tanya member dalam persatuan, so it must be based on recommendation to get the others member in that club lah. So it's very time consuming, right? So to get another one sample to another sampling unit is very time consuming. Sample is not selected randomly, but it going to introduce a bias lah. So this is one of the illustration for a snowball or referral sampling techniques, right? So the procedure ends will until required number of respondent obtained. So you can combine convenience, quota, and snowball together into one sampling techniques. Boleh eh? So this is very simple because non-probability sampling techniques require no randomization, right? So before we go to simple random sampling techniques, systematic, cluster and stratified and multi-stage, kita rehat 5 minit, right? Are you okay? Ada soalan tak berkenaan dengan non-probability sampling techniques? Tak ada? Right, kita take 5 minute rest. Okay, let's continue on randomized sampling techniques or probabilistic sampling techniques, right? So let's look into the first one. This is the most fundamental randomized sampling techniques, which is a simple random sampling. Simple random samplings, dia kata dekat sini, each element in the population will have the same chance of being selected as a sample. So the second properties in simple random sampling is it must have a complete list of sampling frame, right? Complete list of sampling frame. So it most appropriate if the population is homogeneous, means that it have same characteristics. Means that when you want to find the population is students in UiTM Tapah, so means that you want to select all members in the population, maksudnya dia mesti jadi student in UiTM Tapah. You cannot include lecturers, you cannot include all other staff, right? It must be all students in UiTM Tapah. And another criteria of doing a simple random sampling is the population size must not be too large. It must be able to you must be able to get all members in the population, a list of all members in the population. So the method for simple random sampling known as a lottery method, and another method is known as random method lah. So we're not going to use a lottery method, we're going to use a random method. So let's say, for example, let's say I buat dekat sini lah. Let's say mana tadi? Dia lari ya. Okay. Let's say remember the process of sampling method tadi. Process of sampling method start with the define population, right? So let's say our population is all students in UiTM Tapah. UiTM campus Tapah lah. So let's say population, all member in population is the total population going to be 5,000. Second step is, this is step number 1. Oops. This is step number 1. Step number 2, let's say sampling frame. You need to have a complete list of sampling frame. Let's say you have a list of member in the population. let's say from 1 to 1000. So this is number 1. Let's say Ahmad. So student number 2021 berapa. And then phone number, address, right? And then we have course, program course. And then we have part, right? Contoh kita ambil ini saja, right? So number 2 benda yang sama. 3, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until 5000. So this is a list of all member in the population consists of their information known as sampling frame. Right, this is the process. Remember, very simple but very tedious process. So step number 4. What is the step number 4? We need to determine. Step number 3. Number 3, determine a sample size. So what is our sample size? Let's say we have done, we have did our sampling sample size calculation. We want to select out of 5000, we want to select only let's say 10. Kita nak tunjuk contoh yang kecil lah, so you can understand. Tunjuk contoh yang kecil. 10 saja, you nak ambil 10 saja. Right? 10. So 10 ni you want to select 10 members, 10 sampling unit from 5000 into a sampling frame, a sampling unit. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, you nak cukupkan 10. Right, step number 4, we need to specify our sampling method. So let's say in this case we want to select a simple random sampling. So we want to use simple random sampling. Step number 5, we begin selecting the sample. Right, now, in simple random sampling, the first number, the first sampling unit to be selected is based on a random number. So nampak tak dekat sini? We have a total population is 5000. So we have 4 digits, right? 4 digits number. In the random number table, kita ada first kita ada, let's say dia ada beberapa block lah. This is a block number 1, block number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 lah. Kalau kita tengok dalam statistical table, dia ada banyak block, right? So even bukan satu page saja, banyak page ada dalam ni, right? So kita nak tengok example saja dulu, right? So you boleh begin to select at any point. At any point, let's say you starting with this block number 2 from second row, right? Block number 2 from second row, right? This is row number 2. Block number 2 means column number 2 lah. So you nak ambil yang first one, 4954. Sebab apa kita ambil 4954? Sebab kita ada until 5000. Kalau you ambil 2 digit saja, you akan bias until 99 saja kan? You remember? So we have 4 digits, we going to select until 4 digits lah. So you boleh ambil the first one, yang you go down ke bawah daripada 4954, 5724, 1695 and so on lah, sampai ke bawah. And then you start and for the second row, second block, you boleh start dekat sini ataupun you boleh teruskan dengan dekat sini, suka hati, right? It's random, right? But you need to have a process lah, the systematic, right? Ataupun you tak nak turun ke bawah, you nak pergi ke kanan, maksudnya 4954, the next sampling unit 4354, and then 82117, and then 3793 pun boleh juga, but you need to have a systematic selecting procedure. You boleh pilih ke bawah ataupun ke tepi. But my advice is you try to do ke bawah lah, vertically, right? So let's say the first sampling unit to be selected, we are using random choosing lah. Mana-mana you boleh pilih suka-suka hati mana yang you nak ambil blok mana. Let's say I ambil 4954, right? 4954. So I mencari dalam sampling unit, sampling frame, respondent ke 4954. Right. So let's say nama dia Ali. Contoh, dia punya information semua dekat sini. So I akan ambil the first one ni, akan masuk dalam sampling unit. So the first sampling unit to be selected is the member in the population number 4954. Boleh faham? The second member will be 5724. Right, dekat sini nampak tak? 5724. Besar sikit. Besar dia lari. Oops. Okay. The second number dekat sini, random number, 5724. But you can see our limitation. Oish, dia suka lari ya. Mana dia pergi? Turun bawah terus. Okay. The next number is 5724. Tapi 5724 is out of bound of our limit. Our limit until 5,000 kan? So we can skip this one, this number. Kita boleh skip. Go to the next number, which is 1695. So kita ambil 1695. So 1695 should supposed to be here lah. 1695. Right. So kita masuk sampling unit number 2 is 1695. So respondent member yang number 1695 kita akan ambil dalam sampling unit. And the process is going on until we satisfy our sampling unit lah. Mesti 10. Mesti this one tak boleh masuk 947. So kita masuk 947. And then 4417. 4417. This one 8416 tak boleh masuk. 82197 tak boleh. Ni pun tak boleh. Tak boleh. Sebab out beyond our limit. And then the next one, number 5 is 4033. Next, ni tak boleh masuk, tak boleh masuk. 3327. And this one also cannot. And number 7 is 4855. And then this one tak boleh masuk, tak boleh masuk. Okay, dah habis. Right? So still kita tak meet our sampling unit. Right, sampling size. So, apa kita boleh buat? Sama ada kita teruskan ke atas ni ataupun dekat sini. So, kita teruskan kat sini lah. Let's say I ambil color lain. 4354. The next one, cancel. This one cannot. 2796 and 1658. Right, so kita dah cukup semua 10 sampel sampling unit yang kita nak. Right. What happen kalau number tu appear 2 times? Maksudnya 4417 muncul juga dekat atas ni 4417. So we can skip lah. We cannot select the same number dalam 2 kali kan? Sebab dia boleh masuk sekali saja. Right, itu saja. So this is the process of selecting simple random sampling. Right. Boleh? Okay. So, we need to understand the process of simple random sampling lah. This is very important. But actually, it's very simple lah. Right? So, when you want to distribute a questionnaire, you want to do a observation, you just find this member saja. Alright? So, this is simple random sampling. So advantage is have a least bias, since each unit or in the population has an equal chance of being chosen. Easy to implement, minimize possible classification error. So this is the advantage of simple random sampling. But in statistics, you need to remember there's still an error, there's still a bias, but we want to minimize the bias, right? So that's why we do the randomized sampling techniques. So the disadvantage, a complete sampling frame, sometimes difficult to get, right? Very unrepresentative sample may result if the population is not homogeneous. This is why we need to make sure our population characteristic is homogeneous. Homogeneous maksudnya dia mempunyai sama karakteristik yang sama. Maksudnya all student in UiTM Tapah. Maksudnya kita mesti ambil student saja, tak boleh ambil staff and lecturers. So it will cost you a lot of money and time consuming, right? Since the respondent might be widespread lah. Okay? So this is about simple random sampling. Any question before we proceed to the next topic, next method, right? So make sure you understand the simple random sampling. So next we go to systematic sampling techniques. So in simple random sampling, systematic, stratified, you need to know the step of doing it. First, we need to define the population, select, list down the sampling frame, determine the sample size, and begin selecting the samples you need by using a random number, right? Until we satisfy the whole sample size that we need. Now let's look at into a systematic sampling techniques. It's similar to the simple random sampling, but this complete sampling frame is not necessary complete. We don't need to have the whole sampling frame, but it's advisable to have a sampling frame lah. So this technique is not fully randomized, it's a partial randomization, right? Since in the only first sampling unit is selected randomly. The subsequent sampling unit is based on the K interval, right? So it's based on the K interval. The K value is total population divided by total sample size. Let's say we want to select, tadi kita nak select berapa? K is equal to total population, we have 5,000. We want to select only 10 sample. So it will be 500. K will be 500 lah. Right. So dia kata dekat sini procedure. So look at the procedure. First, we need to list down the unit population and then decide the sample size, calculate the K interval size, which is K interval. Right. So K is calculated to be number of decimal. Then the number should be round up to be the highest, the nearest integer. So let's say kita dapat dalam bentuk interval, decimal, 500.2 for example. So we need to round up, bukan round down. Round up, so should be 501. Okay. This is the example lah kalau kita dapat in decimal point. And then step number 4, select one element randomly using a simple random sampling method from 1 to K units in the population list. Right? Daripada let's say this one 500, so daripada 1 hingga 500, kita mesti mencari random sample. Right? And then proceed to select others element at every K interval until required sample size is met. For example, kita menggunakan example yang sama. Let's say we want to select 10 students out of 5,000 students using a systematic sampling techniques. Right? So now, first we need to determine our population size, which is 5,000 lah. This is a population. So always remember the sampling process lah. First, population size, and then number 2, a sampling frame. So 1 until 5,000, a sampling frame. And then number 3 will be a sample size. So this is n equal to 10. I nak tunjuk contoh yang kecil so you can understand. And step number 4 is we're going to use a systematic sampling. Okay, now. So in systematic sampling, we need to determine our K. So K is equal to capital N divided by small letter n. Should be 5,000, right? 1,000 divided by 10 should be equal to 500 lah. So we're going to select, this is the first step. Second step is we're going to select randomly, select first sampling unit between 1 to 500. Right, so we can use a random number. Let's say, ayo, suka hati pergi mana-mana. Let's say I ambil yang block number, column number 3, row number 1. Right, we have, say we're going to select until 500 kan, 1 until 500. So we're going to use 3 digits. Right, we're going to use 3 digits. So the first random number is 469, right? So still between 500 kan, 469. So we're going to select the first sampling unit 469. So sampling unit, right? So the first member to be selected as a sampling unit is member number 469 from the population list lah. This is 469. 469. Kita ambil kat sini, masuk dalam ni. So this is the first member in the sampling unit. The second member in the sampling unit will be the next 500. The next 500. Maksudnya mana kita dapat 500 tu? Based on K interval. The next 500 means that 969. The third one is the next 500. 1469. 1569. Boleh faham? Until we met our we finish our sampling unit lah. For example, kita tunjuk sampai habis. Let's say number 5 is 1969. Sorry, this is salah. This is 1969. This is 2469. And this is number 5 is 2969. Number 7 is 3469. Dia sama aja kan? Number 8 3969. Number 9 is 4469. And number 10 is, let's say, 4969. So this is a nice example, right? Sebab kita ambil sampai 10 je kan. Let's say kita nak ambil sampai 20. What will happen? The next one is 11 lah, contoh 11. Let's say kita ambil sampai 20. Let's say dia I nak tunjuk ni maksudnya lebih daripada limit, right? Maksudnya our limit is 5,000 kan, right? Of course kalau kita nak ambil 20 means K will be reduced lah, 5,000 divided by 20 kan. But in case I just want to show you, in case dia beyond the limit 5,000 ni, so what will happen? So kita akan patah balik lah. 4969 plus 500, so should be 5469, right? So dia akan lebih daripada 5,000 kan. And then kalau kita buang 5,000, dia akan balik kepada asal. Right? Boleh? Faham? So that's why on the next step, kita boleh pakai balik random number to select the first, the next sampling unit. And then kita start balik menggunakan interval. Boleh faham? Okay? So this is the sampling, systematic sampling techniques. Right? Very simple, and does not require the full sampling frame. So yang ni contohnya bila I tunjuk menggunakan full sampling frame. So in what example, in what state kita tak perlukan semua sampling frame? Contoh, let's say you want to use a systematic sampling techniques untuk let's say to find to do a study on satisfaction on McDonald's products. Contoh kan. So kita tunggu orang yang queue dalam produk dalam McDonald's. Contoh ni zaman dulu punya example lah. Dia pergi ke McDonald's and the queue beratur, right? Tak semestinya McDonald's lah, anything yang require queue. So you pick one respondent randomly yang ada dalam tu. Let's say ada 10 orang, you menggunakan random number, pick one, right? So then after the first sampling unit, the next sampling unit is based on k interval lah. It should be based on k interval. So how to determine the k interval? Because the number of customer dekat McDonald's kita tak tahu hari yang datang tu kan. So that's why we need to have the estimate population or estimate number of customer who came in on that month. Right? Kita boleh dapat tu, and then baru kita cari dia punya sample size lah. And itu banyak kerja sikit lah. Right. Any question about systematic sampling techniques? Before we proceed to the next sampling techniques. My objective is I want to finish up this chapter by today. Ada soalan? Yes? No question. Right. So, yeah, ada soalan kan? I tak dengar. Cakap kuat sikit. Okay, good. Mana I punya mouse? Screen mana ni? Oh, ada. Okay. Alright. So advantage is for systematic sampling techniques, it's easy and simple to draw a sample lah. Cheaper than simple random sampling. Right? Can be chosen much more speedily lah. Disadvantage is may result a systematic bias lah. May result in a representative sample because the only first sampling unit menggunakan random number. So now, before we go to cluster, I would like to jump to stratified first. And then after stratified, we go to cluster sampling techniques. So, stratified sampling techniques, right? Dia kata kat sini, in this techniques, the population is first divided into subgroup known as strata. So, we have a population, we divide the population into subgroup known as strata, into a group lah. Group ni kita panggil strata. Within each stratum, the element are homogeneous. Apa maksud homogeneous ni? Homogeneous means sama lah. Heterogeneous means tak sama. That's the term lah, saja bagi confuse you kan. Homogeneous means group yang mempunyai karakteristik yang sama. Heterogeneous group yang mempunyai karakteristik yang tak sama. So, within each stratum, dalam setiap group ni, dalam group yang pertama ni, dia mesti mempunyai karakteristik yang sama. Group yang kedua mempunyai karakteristik yang sama. Group nombor 3 mempunyai karakteristik yang sama. Tapi di antara group biru dengan group orange ni, dia mempunyai karakteristik yang berbeza, heterogeneous. Maksudnya tak samalah. Maksudnya let's say you want to study a student in UiTM Tapa who took STA 404. Contoh kan. So in STA 404, I have 4 groups. Contoh. So group 4A, 4B, 6A and 6B. Right? So dia mempunyai karakteristik yang sama dalam population. Student who took STA 404. But I have 4 group, 4A, 4B, 6A and 6B. Right? So let's say N dekat 6A 4A ni ada 30. N for 4B ada 28. This is 33. N 33. This one ada N 28 contoh. Right? So setiap dalam kumpulan ni mempunyai sifat yang sama, karakteristik yang sama, means that they enroll to 4A. And within each group, between each group, dia mempunyai karakteristik yang sama, means that they have different group, different lecturers. Right? So ini dipanggil strata lah setiap group ni. So how to do stratified sampling techniques? The procedure is, first we need to subdivide the population into homogeneous strata, and we need to list down all element in each stratum. Maksudnya we need to have a sampling frame for each group. Bukan the whole population lah, but for each group. But basically we're going to get the whole population jugalah, kan? But for each group we are going to have a in silo sampling frame, right? And then we're going to select samples randomly from each stratum. Contoh macam ni, table ni. Let's say this is group 4A, 4B, 6A, 6B and 6C lah, right? So total population ada 5,000. Right? So each stratum, the first group ada 500, 800, 1,000, 7,000, 2,000. You need to do this table like this lah. Right? So let's say you want to select 1,000 respondent out of 5,000. Right? 1,000 respondent out of 5,000. So the sample size for each stratum will be 500 divided by 5,000, right? So 500 divided by 5,000 multiply with 1,000. So you will get 100. So in this case 160 mana dia dapat? 800 divided by 5,000 multiply with 1,000, the sample size that you required. So you will get 160. So 400 ni mana dapat? 2,000 bahagi dengan 5,000 total population multiply with 1,000. So they will get 400. Boleh? So now I nak tunjuk je the process. Oops. I punya mouse mana pergi Okay, right. So let's say the process is same, right? Kita ada population. We divide, let's say n is equal to 5,000. So we divide into 3 groups contoh, right? So in each 3 group we need to have a sampling frame, right? Sampling frame for each 3 groups. Right, 1 until, let's say this one n equal to 2,000 and 2 equal to 1,000, right? 1,000 and 3 equal to 2,000. So total is 5,000. So we need to have a sampling frame. This is 1 until 1,000. This is 1 until 2,000. And this is 1 until 2,000. Right? So let's say we want to select 1,000 out of 5,000 ni. So N1 yang kita nak select ni, let's say we want to select 100. N2 we want to select let's say 700. This one N3 we want to select, let's say 200. Tapi the value of n yang kita nak select ni must based on the proportion lah, right? Based on 1000 divided by 500 multiply with 1000. So 1000 divided by 500 multiply with 1000 lah. It should be berapa? Let's say kita kira lah, bagi saya tunjuk betul-betul. 1000 multiply 1000 divided by 5000. So it should be 200 lah. Okay, this one should be 200. Right? For this one, 2000 divided by 5000 multiply this is 1000 kita nak ambil kan, 1000. So this one should be 2000, 1000, 5000. This one should be 400 lah. This one also same lah, benda yang sama kan, calculation dia. So this one should be 400. This one N3 also 400. Right? So to select 200 sampling unit, we are employing a simple random sampling method lah, macam ni. Sama saja proses. But the process dekat sebelum tu sedikit berbeza sebab kita divide the population into group. Boleh faham tak apa yang cakap ni? Boleh kan? Right, good. So this is the process of stratified sampling method lah. So stratified sampling method can represent the population since each stratum are representative lah. Can represent the population, each stratum are representative. Precision is improved. The disadvantage is certified lists are not available, can be costly, expensive, require accurate information. So now, listen carefully. Stratified sampling method is only suitable when you have very small population. Right? When you have a large population, for example, you want to study a member in district, contoh resident in Perak di Tengah district. So it contain a very large population. So the stratified method is not is impossible lah, nearly impossible. Right? It's not practical. So that's why there are another method called as cluster. Right? Cluster, same procedure as systematic stratified sampling method, but some tweak dalam selecting members. So cluster sampling method, it divide the population into a subgroup known as cluster. So remember the difference between cluster and stratified. Cluster is suitable when you have a very large population. Stratified when you have a very small population. Right? When you have a very large population, you cannot do stratified. Very impossible. Right? So cluster, it divide your population into subgroup known as cluster. So the procedure is subdivide the population into heterogeneous cluster. Means that we're going to divide into a heterogeneous cluster, right? And then select cluster randomly using a simple random sample, and then take census. It takes census. Highlight this one. Take census from each selected cluster. This is a different method from stratified sampling method. Stratified sampling method, when we have a class group known as strata, right? Dekat sini group known as strata dekat sini, right? So, and then each member dalam strata ni, dalam group ni, kita menggunakan simple random sampling. Kita select member. But for cluster sampling techniques, kita tak guna simple random sampling untuk select members. we take census. What is census? Census means that we consider all members in the population, right? For example, let's say we have six district in one state. Right? Dalam satu state ni kita ada banyak district. District A, district B, until district F. Right? So in each district, we have... Oops. Terputus, huh? So are you with me? Right, suddenly dia terputus. Alright. So in each district, we have a lot of village. Contoh kan, ada 10 village. Let's say kita divide the population into subgroup known as cluster. In each cluster ni, dia mempunyai karakteristik yang berbeza. Right? Each cluster mempunyai karakteristik yang berbeza. So let's say we have like this situation. So let's say total population, let's say 200k, very large population members, right? So to get the list of sampling frame also nearly impossible lah, right? So we divide the population into subgroup known as cluster, and then we select cluster randomly using simple random sampling. So now we have 6 cluster, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's say we want to select 2 cluster out of 6, right? So we're going to use a random number table. So random number table kita tak ambil satu lah. Let's say since dia ada 6 saja kan, 6 maksudnya single digit. So let's say kita boleh mula the first one lah, right? So, kosong ni tak boleh masuk lah sebab kita ada kosong. Kita ada start from 1. So, 9 pun tak boleh masuk sebab kita ada 1 saja. 6 saja. So, kita ambil 1. So, cluster number 1. The next one is 1 juga. Tak boleh sebab kita dah select 1. The next one is 5. Right, cukuplah 2 cluster. 1 dan 5. So, we select cluster number 1 and cluster number 5. So, contoh dalam buku ni dia select cluster number 2 and cluster number 5. Tapi kalau kita tengok dalam random number table yang kita pilih tadi, kita akan select cluster number 1 and cluster number 5. Right? So we're going to select a member in district A and district E. Right? Step number, let's say this is 2,000 kan, 2,000 population. Let's say in district A we have NA, let's say we have 50,000 members. This one we have NE, let's say 100,000. 100 too much lah. Let's say 7,000 lah, 70,000 lah, 70,000. Right, dia ada banyak district lagi kan. So, dalam each district A ni, kita ada 10 village. Dalam district E, also 10 village. So, step number 3, we take census from each selected cluster. So, maksudnya, 50,000 orang dalam district A ni, kita banci semua. 70,000 orang dalam district E ni, kita distribute all the questionnaire to 70,000 people. So this is cluster lah, right? So let's look at into, tak tulis, multi-stage. So multi-stage tak ada, tak apa. Kita tengok dia punya, I will explain about multi-stage. Multi-stage is the same procedure as cluster sampling techniques. Assume that we cannot afford to distribute 50,000 people or 70,000 people, right? So we need to use another method known as multi-stage. Multi-stage means they apply cluster method on cluster method on cluster method. So dia narrow down. So let's say tadi kita dah select 2 district. This is a multi-stage, multi-stage. I'm talking about multi-stage now. Let's say we are already selecting 2 district, 2 cluster using a simple random sampling. So in each cluster, we have 10 village. 10 village. Let's say in each village ni dia ada N V1 ada berapa, N V2 atau N V10 ni ada berapa orang lah. So this one kita treat as group lagi. Treat as cluster, sub-cluster. This one kita treat sebagai sub-cluster. So for district A, let's say we want to select only 2 village out of 10 village. So we use a simple random sampling to select 2 village out of 10 village. Let's say we select village number 3 and village number 7. So if you want to stop here, so we want to take census for all members in village 3 and village 7. Kalau you tak boleh stop here lagi, you are still a constraint of your constraint is about money and time. So you boleh narrow down lagi based on street. Based on street, number of house dalam street tu kita bahagi-bahagikan based on jalan, and kita select lagi sub cluster dalam tu, and then kita buat census. Boleh faham? Boleh So this is what we call as a multi-stage lah. Kita narrow down. Tapi at the end, we still do census. Right? Boleh? So this is advantage and disadvantage. You boleh baca sendirilah. So I think that's all for randomized sampling techniques. Any questions so far? Any question ni nanti I akan post dalam Google Classroom lah. This all question kita akan post dalam Google Classroom, and we will do a discussion on next class. Right? Boleh? Ada soalan before we end our session? Question? No, Right.